If you want to know the dirty, no BS reason why you haven't been able to fix your sexual anxiety, this is the video for you. But I'll tell you is that this is going to seem a little contradictory. I'm going to talk about two things that actually seem like they're in conflict. But this is really only the surface level. If we look below the surface, you'll realize that they're actually very congruent with each other. And so these two things are respect for sex and indifference towards sex. So what I mean by respect for sex is that most people treat sex way too casually, okay? When you think about sex, all you're really thinking about is how do I get off? How do I go in and have my girl have this experience where she has 20 orgasms and then I orgasm and I stay hard and everything goes great? That's what you're looking for. But what you're not paying attention to is there's so much depth to what sex is. And you can see this by looking at nearly every culture around the world has very strict rules about sex. And some treat it to be a very sacred thing. And the reason that they create these rules is because it's sacred. And the reason for that is that if we look at the one form of pure creation that humans get, it's the ability to create life. When you have sex with somebody, you have the ability to literally bring a new life into this world. And when you're just bored and jerking off, you're not treating sex with the respect that comes with something that can literally create life. And from another level of this, you're not paying attention to the emotional state that jerking off or going into a sexual situation creates based on how you're looking at it. And you're also not taking into account the fact that every time you ejaculate, it took your body 3 months to make mature sperm. The process of a sperm being created and then maturing takes 3 months. Now think about how often you ejaculate. The thing is, you're not paying attention to how energetically draining that is for your body to do that. Think about working on something for 3 months and then having somebody just throw it away. It's not very respectful. And this doesn't mean that you can't enjoy sex or you can't masturbate. The point is that it's your attitude towards these things. When you go into a sexual situation, we need to have a certain level of respect, a certain level of reverence, care, understanding towards our body for putting in all of the effort to make that possible. When you have an orgasm, it's a huge energetic, like bioelectrical event in your nervous system. And you don't probably pay attention to that. And so what we want to do is we want to treat sex with more respect. And the last way that I've seen guys kind of treat sex disrespectfully, believe it or not, is by just not fixing this problem. If you have this problem, you do because you're watching this video, and you're not putting effort and time and money into trying to fix it, you're treating the sexual part of yourself disrespectfully. You're basically telling it, you have this problem, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to worry that it's permanent and I'm going to think about wanting to fix it, but like not actually taking action to fix it is a very disrespectful thing that you're doing to yourself, because sex is an important part of being a human. And if you want to treat the sexual part of you with respect, you need to respect it by trying to figure out what's wrong. So don't wait another day. You have a limited amount of days that you can get help with this problem. And what I mean by that is, if you're 40, how many years are you going to have left of having sex? If you're 30, you've got more. If you're 20, you've got even more. But every day that you don't do something active, not just watch a YouTube video, but actively try to fix this problem, what you're communicating to yourself is that sex actually isn't that important to me, and so I'm willing to let the sexual part of myself be unhealthy. And that's just not a good idea. What's very interesting is when you actually start taking actions towards fixing this problem, you'll feel better just because you're doing something rather than nothing. The other side that we have to look at is indifference towards sex. And what I mean by this is, if you go into a sexual situation and if you lose your erection, you're devastated. Or if you stay hard and you're so happy. Really, both of these are signs of just being too attached to sex, okay? What healed looks like isn't that I stayed hard and then I'm like, yeah! There's nothing wrong with celebrating, but if it takes your emotional state up to a 10 out of 10, that's really not a sign that you're getting better. Why? Because if it makes you that happy to stay hard, it's going to make you just as unhappy if it doesn't go well the next time. And so what's very interesting that I've noticed with guys is that as they're starting to get to the point where they're healthy, what starts to happen is even if they lose an erection, they're kind of nonchalant about it. They're really indifferent. And the reason for it is that they're no longer attached to the outcome of what happens. If I lost an erection tonight, I wouldn't feel terrible. I wouldn't beat myself up. I would literally just go, why did that happen? And I would look logically at the situation and try and understand what should I do differently. And that's the relationship that you have with something in your life that's healthy. If a light bulb in your house stopped working, you wouldn't get really upset. And then if you went and changed the light bulb, you wouldn't be like, yes! It would just be like, oh, okay, the light bulb's out. And you would change it. And if you want to get to a point where you're healthy, you have to stop putting so much pressure on the outcome. The outcome isn't what's important, okay? It's the journey to get to the outcome. From where you are right now to get to the point where you're healed, the person that you are, the way that you look at sex, your relationship with sex, all have to change. And what I mean by that is that if you continue to treat sex the way that you're treating it now, you'll continue to have the sex life you have right now. And so the important part is not actually that you get your erections back. It's the person that you become in the process of getting better. You become more mature. You have a more mature relationship with sex. You have a more mature relationship with yourself. You have a more mature relationship with other people that you're having sex with. And as you go through that process, the outcome becomes less and less important because you start to realize that there's a part of yourself that you weren't looking at, that was being suppressed, that was being ignored. In the same way that when you're looking at sex, if you just see getting off as the goal, you're missing a whole spectrum of beautiful parts of sex that you weren't paying attention to. And the crazy thing is, as you pay attention to that, your sex life gets significantly better than you can imagine. But not because it gets super kinky and crazy. It's because you start to recognize that having a really good emotional connection with somebody will be way better than having sex with somebody who knows all the best techniques. Why? Because it just feels more real in some ways. And so if you're trying to deal with sexual anxiety by finding a trick or just a mental flip, you're missing the part that has to happen, which is you have to grow into a more mature person. You have to treat sex more maturely. And maturely in this case includes both treating it more with respect, but also not putting so much pressure on it. I'll close out with one of my mentors used to say, sex is only a big deal when you're not having it. And if you're struggling with this problem right now, you make sex a really big deal. But if you look at what you're going to be like when you're healed, it won't be that big of a deal. It'll be fun. You'll look forward to it. You'll have a great time. But it's not going to ruin your day if it doesn't go perfectly. And it's not going to ruin your day leading up to it. And that's just a kind of maturity. So if you want help getting a more realistic, more practical, and more healthy relationship with sex, there's a link down below that you can use to get a hold of me. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to give you help. I'd love to help you get past this problem and finally have an amazing sex life that you can be proud of.